I'm Ulibide Samoka. Buinelon Sole is interpreting in sign language. Now let's take a look at stories making headlines. Landlocked developed nations called on to participate in climate change negotiations with one voice. Public service remuneration policy and review of the public service salary structure to be completed this financial year. Mushidi Centre Chiefs beats Extension Gunners in a First Division South encounter. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Now, in our first story, the President, Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi, who is also the chairperson of the group of landlocked developing countries, has called on the Climate Change Summit in Dubai to allow such countries to participate in climate change negotiations as a group so that their views are articulated in one voice. He was speaking on Saturday at a meeting on the third United Nations Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries on the margins of the COP28 in Dubai.
Until climate change challenges are resolved, one reason will continue to meet, especially all 32 landlocked developing countries, which are the most hard hit by climate-related challenges. Realizing it is a race against time, landlocked developing countries are now advocating to be included in the climate change negotiating table as a group. They do not want a middleman between them and the negotiators.
Our call from this meeting to the international community is to accord due consideration to our group of countries in conformity with the magnitude of the challenges that we continue to face. We would like to participate in the climate change negotiations as a group. The landlocked developing countries have high expectations from COP28. We are at a tipping point. Waiting will not make our job easier. We fully share the urgency of acting now with ambitious and rapid emissions cut, responding to the findings of the first ever global stocktake. We agree that all countries need to act on this in order to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius target.
As chairperson of this group, Masisi continues that their unique challenges cannot be ignored anymore.
We also want to have our presence in the governing board of the fund.
The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, supports the move by landlocked developing countries, pointing out that they have a moral obligation to exist.
I think you have a moral authority to tell big emitters, namely the G20 countries that represent 80% of the emissions, it's time to seriously reduce emissions in order for LLDCs to have a chance not to be so dramatically impacted by the acceleration of the climate chaos consequences.
He further stated that should funding become available, interest rates should be accommodative.
We need an international financial system that meets the needs of LLDCs with an effective debt relief mechanism that supports payment suspensions, longer lending terms, and lower rates.
While part of the official program has concluded, climate change negotiators are not having it easy. A series of closed-door meetings are underway here in Dubai at COP28 to come out with the best possible solutions to save the earth from becoming uninhabitable. On Tatile Boti, BTV News, Dubai.
President Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi, who is also chairperson of the Global Water Change Maker Award, has called on the private sector to invest in water and sanitation service in Africa and not leave it to government to do it alone. Speaking at the high-level panel on water investment for Africa in Dubai yesterday, Masisi said the plan is to assist countries to mobilize at least $30 billion annually by 2030 to achieve water-related SDG target. The mandate of the International High-Level Panel on Water Investments for Africa is to drive global political mobilization and international engagement to meet the socio-economic needs of the continent, achieving SDG 6 and other water-related goals and addressing the challenge of climate change.
The high-level panel, Africa Water Investment Panel, we're launching today, will assist countries to mobilize at least $30 billion annually by 2030 for the achievement of water-related SDG targets on the continent. The investment plan proposed to mobilize at least 30% of the $30 billion from institutional investors, pension funds, and innovative financing. The investment in water and sanitation infrastructure and services cannot be left to government alone. In this respect, the private sector should also play its part in supporting efforts aimed at addressing water and sanitation challenges in Africa. The participation of the private sector in the provision of water and sanitation services will contribute immensely to the noble work of the Africa Water Investment Program of mobilizing $30 billion for supporting Sustainable Development Goal 6 investments, which will create 5 million jobs by 2030, amongst others. As chair of the Global Water Changemaker Awards, I am committed to policies and strategies that promote the most promising climate resilient innovations with the greatest potential for scale and replication.
The First Lady, Ms. Noma Sisi, has issued a passionate call for immediate action and commitment to tackle the multifaceted challenges faced by young people in Botswana. Addressing the youth in Nata, the First Lady said recognizing pressing issues, particularly in villages like Nata, calls for a united effort to uplift and empower the younger generation. Mamusi Siska.
In an effort to decrease the prevalence of HIV and AIDS among the youth, the First Lady is actively engaging with various target groups across the country. Recently, she conducted sessions in Nata. Given the current alarming statistics of the spread of the disease, there is a pressing need to dig deep into factors contributing to this increase, especially among young girls.
1 out of every 10 infections in the country, 4 infections are 3 infections are happening in the young population, and out of that, almost like out of 10, 2.5 or 25% are in the young girls. Now, what is putting them at risk? We all know, and my previous speaker very clearly said, we all are struggling with a lot of issues related to inequality.
A family is a child-headed setup. 16 years old, they run out of resources.
Youth-friendly clinics.
Matsile's call to action extends beyond policy changes as she appeals to every citizen to participate in community-driven solutions.
Your document, some key action items. And the interesting thing here is those key action items are going to require big changes, and we have decided also